The moon spills silver light across the endless sand, and you stand there, caught between silence and whispers you can't quite place. The desert breathes around you, warm in the day, cold now at night, and the shadows of distant caravans stretch long, thin, almost skeletal. The air feels heavy with trade, with secrets, with things you probably shouldn't overhear. And yes, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your location and the exact time you're listening. I want to see who's awake when they shouldn't be. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander along a narrow trail, the velvet shadows of the caravan swaying in front of you. Each camel lurches forward as if it's seen this story 1,000 times before, as if it knows how fragile your little attempt at survival really is. The merchants riding them don't look at you much. Their eyes are locked on the horizon, on the safety of the next outpost, or the danger waiting between here and there. You tell yourself it's just a road. But the Silk Road isn't just a line on the map, it's a living, shifting thing. It's part marketplace, part gamble, part stage play where the props are silk, spices, and silver, and the actors are people who can smile while calculating exactly how much you're worth dead. That's the first little gift of the Silk Road. It convinces you you're safe because you're surrounded by so many others. Safety in numbers, right, wrong. Numbers here mean only one thing: more targets. A fire flickers near the edge of the caravan camp. Someone's roasting something that smells like mutton, tough, stringy, but edible. The smoke curls upward, vanishing into the cold night, and you're reminded that this place is both cradle and grave. For centuries, travelers like you have walked this same path, their shadows melting into the dust. Some returned home so wealthy they bought half a city. Most never made it back. Scholars still argue whether those lost souls were swallowed by bandits, nature, or just plain bad luck. You try to blend in, but blending in isn't exactly possible. Your clothes are new, not softened by years of sweat and sand. Your water skin is still full, an obvious marker that you haven't yet been pushed to desperation. And in case you thought you could pass unnoticed, here's the quirky detail no one tells you: the jingling of your coins carries farther at night than your footsteps. Imagine announcing, "Please rob me," every time you shift your belt. Yeah, not great for stealth. A merchant with a deep-lined face looks at you, his beard heavy with dust. He nods in that vague way that might mean, "Stay close to the fire," or might mean, "Don't get stabbed when you sleep." Communication is slippery here, half in language, half in gesture, and entirely in risk. You sit by the fire anyway, because really, what's the alternative? Wander into the dark, alone, and vanish before dawn. You're already doomed. At least stay warm while you can. Someone starts telling a story. You don't catch every word, but you hear Samarkand, Jade, and a river that eats men. The others listen quietly, their eyes fixed on the flames, their ears tuned not just to the story but to the sounds around camp, the soft crunch of sand, the low hiss of wind. Everyone's pretending to relax, but everyone's also waiting for the first mistake: a knife unsheathed, a shadow too close, a sudden silence where breathing should be. And because you're new here, you're still caught between awe and unease. The Silk Road looks romantic in books and paintings, full of exotic wares and heroic travelers. But standing here, the romance is replaced by logistics: how much water you carry, how heavy your pack is, how far your legs can keep moving before your lungs collapse. No one tells you that surviving the Silk Road isn't about heroics, it's about math. Too much gold, you get robbed. Too little food, you starve. Walk too slow, the desert swallows you. Walk too fast, your camel dies. Every choice bleeds into the next, and every choice brings you closer to an ending you don't want. And here's a historical tidbit to keep in mind: silk itself wasn't just fabric. It was a status signal, currency, and sometimes even a weapon of politics. The Roman elite wore it to flaunt their power, while others called it sinful, claiming it weakened men. Imagine that, dying of thirst in the desert so some senator could wear a shiny robe to dinner. Feels unfair, doesn't it? The fire crackles, throwing sparks into the night, and you realize how much noise a single spark makes when everything else is silent. You glance at the faces around you, strangers who might be companions or might be killers. Out here, you can't really tell. Maybe they can't either. That's the trick of the Silk Road. Survival isn't about trust, it's about guessing who will betray you last. As the night stretches on, the caravan finally quiets. The camels fold their legs and collapse like exhausted ships docking in sand. The merchants roll into blankets patched from places you've never heard of. You, though, you stay awake longer. Not because you want to, but because every shifting shadow feels like a decision about your future. Sleep means safety in other lives, other worlds. Here, sleep just means someone else gets to write your ending first. You breathe slow. The desert breathes slower, and in the velvet shadows of the caravan, you finally accept the truth. This road isn't a path to riches. It's a countdown timer, and yours has already started ticking. The morning doesn't arrive gently here, it slaps you awake with grit in your teeth and the kind of sunlight that feels more like interrogation than warmth. You rise with the caravan, stiff from a half-slept night where every sound sounded like a dagger being drawn. Around you, merchants fuss with their wares, adjusting bundles of silk and jars of spice as if rearranging them could somehow guarantee survival. Spoiler: it won't. You notice the hierarchy immediately. Merchants weigh gold, thieves weigh knives. The entire Silk Road is basically a traveling economy class system, and you're in the lowest row. Gold changes hands like it's supposed to mean something, but really, it's just bait. Every clinking coin attracts attention, and attention is exactly what you don't want. You look around at the men with curved swords hanging casually from their belts, blades polished to catch sunlight like a mocking wink. They don't bother hiding the fact that wealth means nothing here without someone to defend it. The camels groan as they're loaded again, knees bending like reluctant old men. You stumble along with them, trying to convince yourself that the rhythm of their bells will lull you into calm. It doesn't. Each jingle just reminds you how many ears are tuned in. Not all of them belong to your caravan. Somewhere in the dunes, other ears wait, sharper, hungrier. The first hour passes quietly. Then someone yells, a minor dispute over the weight of a sack. Gold coins clatter onto the sand. Instantly, all eyes swivel. You realize in a sick twist of irony that no one cares about the argument, only about the shiny proof of wealth that just spilled like bait on a hook. One man kneels quickly, scooping coins back into the bag, but you can feel the shift in air. That flash of gold is like a flare gun. Somewhere, a thief has just licked his lips. And here's your historical fact of the day. Merchants along the Silk Road sometimes deliberately carried decoy coins or flashy trinkets. The idea was simple: let thieves take the bait, lose the fake wealth, and keep the real stash hidden in saddlebags or sewn into clothes. Smart strategy, except for the part where thieves eventually figured it out and just killed you to check anyway. Scholars still argue whether this arms race between merchants and bandits fueled the creativity of trade or just made everyone paranoid enough to invent entire industries of locks, seals, and hiding places. By midday, the sun burns down on you like molten brass. You're thirsty, cranky, and starting to realize that even if you don't run into bandits, the road itself might kill you. Then, of course, the universe gives you a live demonstration. A small group of riders appears on the horizon. Not close enough to attack, not far enough to ignore. They just shadow you, their silhouettes blurred by heat waves. You feel your stomach tighten. Are they scouts, traders catching up, or the first act of a play that always ends with someone losing blood? The caravan leader notices them too. He raises a hand, mutters something, and the guards, yes, there are guards, shift formation. Their spears tilt outward like thorns on a cactus. You don't feel reassured, though. Guards are paid, and payment here isn't always in coin. Sometimes it's in promises, sometimes in silk, sometimes in loyalty that dissolves the second a better deal is offered. Hospitality's thin, and betrayal's cheap. The riders follow for a while, then vanish behind a dune. Everyone exhales, but too quickly. You catch the twitch of nervous fingers, the way a merchant ties his coin bag tighter. It's not over. It's never over. And here's your quirky little detail. Thieves along this road were sometimes poets. Not in the recite verses before stabbing you kind of way, though that would be funnier. More in the sense that their exploits became legendary songs. Entire villages would sing about one daring raid, elevating a bandit to folk hero status while you, the robbed traveler, got reduced to a nameless background character in their myth. Imagine losing everything and being remembered as the idiot who made the story possible. By nightfall, Tension hangs thick as the smoke from cooking fires. You chew a bit of hard bread that tastes mostly like regret. Around the fire, merchants quietly count their gold. You can't help but notice how many hands stray too often to their belts, how their eyes dart toward one another. It's not just the outside thieves you worry about. It's the thieves inside the circle, the ones who smile at you while memorizing your weaknesses. You think back to the morning, the glint of those riders in the distance, the way everyone silently recalculated their odds. And it hits you. The Silk Road isn't about who has gold. It's about who has knives, and more importantly, who has the nerve to use them first. Sleep comes reluctantly again, if at all. You lie awake, staring at the stars, feeling the weight of invisible eyes. You wonder whether tomorrow, when you wake, the man beside you will still be a fellow traveler, or whether he'll be the one who decided your gold was worth more than your breath. The desert doesn't just stretch, it yawns. Wide, endless, and always hungry. By dawn you're walking straight into it, and the further you go, the more you realize that the Silk Road isn't paved with opportunity. It's paved with bones. The Gobi and the Taklamakan don't politely wait for you to trip, they reach out with invisible fingers, tugging at your lungs, your skin, your sanity. You think you're walking forward, but really you're being eaten slowly, grain by grain. The sun climbs faster than you'd like. Sand reflects the heat upward so that your skin cooks from above and below at the same time, like being trapped in some cruel rotisserie. The wind, instead of cooling you, blasts your face with sand so fine it sneaks into your nose, your ears, even between your teeth. Each step becomes an argument between body and willpower. Your legs beg to stop, but the voice in your head whispers, "Keep moving or the desert writes your obituary by noon." You're not the first, not even close. For centuries caravans have crossed this place, and the desert has always taken its share. Here's the historical fact no one romanticizes. Travelers used to leave markers made of bones to guide the next caravan. Sometimes camel bones, sometimes human. The logic was simple. If you saw skeletons, you knew you were still on the right track. Comforting, right? Scholars still argue whether this grim breadcrumb trail saved more lives than it doomed, since it also led raiders directly to the fattest caravans. The merchants don't waste words today. Their mouths are dry, tongues thick, lips cracked. Even the camels look like they're reconsidering this whole ship of the desert gig. You sip from your water skin, careful to take only the tiniest swallow. It doesn't help. Your throat feels like someone stuffed it with burning sandpaper. And then the hallucinations begin. At first, it's a shimmer on the horizon, water, maybe a lake, glittering under the sun. You know it's not real, but your eyes beg to believe it anyway. You blink, look again, and now it's gone. Your head throbs. The desert doesn't need thieves or swords to kill you. It just needs patience. A quirky little detail slips into your mind, almost cruelly. Some travelers swore the desert whispered. Not just whined, not just your imagination, but actual words in languages you didn't know. A trick of the ears, or maybe the last thing you hear before collapsing. Either way, it's not the kind of bedtime story you wanted. By afternoon, one of the camels collapses. Its knees hit the sand with a sound like a door slamming shut, and it refuses to rise again. The merchants mutter, kick, tug at its harness, but the animal stays down, sides heaving. Eventually, they unload its cargo, redistribute the weight, and leave it behind. You glance back, and the sight drills into you, the camel lying there, blinking slowly, as if it already knows it will never see another oasis. The desert doesn't bother hiding its appetite. The heat sharpens, your shadow shortens until it hides beneath your feet. Your brain feels sluggish, thoughts sticking together like melted wax. Every step feels rehearsed, like you're acting out someone else's tragedy. The caravan leader finally raises a hand, signaling rest. Everyone drops, not out of comfort, but survival. You sit, your body aching, and stare at the horizon. It doesn't move. It never moves. And here's where the scholarly debate slips in. Historians still argue whether the Taklamakan got its name from "you can get in but never get out," or from something more poetic like "place of ruins." Either way, you know which one feels more accurate right now. As night finally falls, the desert changes costume. The heat vanishes so fast it's like someone opened a trapdoor under the sun. The cold slams into you, cruel in a different way, biting at your fingers and toes until you can't tell where skin ends and sand begins. You wrap yourself tighter in your cloak, wishing warmth wasn't such a distant memory. The stars overhead are dazzling, so sharp they almost hurt to look at. For a moment you let yourself imagine they're guiding you, ancient lanterns burning for lost travelers. But the desert doesn't care about your poetry. It cares about your water, your blood, and how long before you collapse. You lie awake again, shivering, the sound of wind brushing over dunes like something alive. You wonder whether tomorrow you'll still be walking, or whether you'll become one of those bone markers yourself, pointing some future stranger toward the next mirage. You wake up to the smell of meat. At first, your stomach leaps, finally, something other than dry bread and regret. But then your brain catches up and reminds you, just because it smells like food doesn't mean it's safe. In fact, on the Silk Road, food is almost as dangerous as bandits. The caravan cook, if you can call him that, is stirring a pot over the fire. Chunks of salted meat bob inside, their edges gray, their smell strong enough to convince you that maybe hunger's not so bad after all. Merchants line up with bowls, and you shuffle into line too, because what else can you do? It's not like you packed a personal lunchbox. You take your portion and chew. It's salty, very salty. Salted meat keeps longer, they say. But here's the thing. Longer doesn't always mean edible. Sometimes it means technically chewable until your stomach stages a violent protest later. You swallow anyway, because the desert already sucked the energy out of your muscles, and starvation isn't exactly an upgrade from dehydration. And here comes the historical fact of the day. Merchants often carried dried and salted foods, meat, fish, cheese, that could last weeks in brutal climates. But there were countless cases where food spoiled mid-journey, spreading sickness faster than any sword fight could. Scholars still argue whether foodborne illness on the Silk Road killed more travelers than actual raids. Personally, after your second bite, you're leaning toward yes. Someone across the fire starts coughing. Not the delicate kind, but the deep, throat-rattling, something's wrong here, kind. Everyone looks at him for a second, then looks away. That's the etiquette of survival. Don't ask, don't care, don't catch it. You take another cautious bite, half expecting your stomach to send you the same warning. A merchant tries to lighten the mood, telling a joke about a trader who bought silk and accidentally sold his wife instead. People laugh, but it's the nervous kind. Humor's just seasoning for the fierce stew you're all simmering in. By midday, you're walking again, belly heavy with meat that feels like it's plotting against you. Sweat runs down your back, making your tunic stick in uncomfortable places. Your water skin is lighter, your patience thinner, and your hope, let's not talk about that. And here's your quirky little detail. Feasts on the Silk Road were a gamble. Sometimes you'd be offered delicacies, dates, pistachios, roasted lamb dripping with fat. Other times, you'd be tricked. Hosts occasionally laced food with herbs that caused hallucinations, not out of malice, but out of ritual or tradition. Imagine sitting down to eat, only to end up seeing dragons crawl out of your bowl. Comforting, right? Later, at a roadside inn, the caravan finally pauses for the night. The inn looks welcoming enough, stone walls, smoke rising from a chimney, lanterns glowing faintly. But if you think this is a safe zone, think again. Hospitality is currency, and currency always has strings. The innkeeper greets the caravan with exaggerated warmth, ushering you all inside. You take a seat at a low wooden table, the smell of bread baking luring you deeper. You tear off a piece, savoring the softness, when your seatmate leans close and mutters, "Eat carefully." Not everything served is meant for guests. You freeze mid-bite, staring at the golden crust in your hand. Is this bread poisoned, or is he just trying to ruin your appetite so he gets more? Either way, you're suddenly less hungry. The scholarly debate slides in here. Historians still argue whether inns along the Silk Road were true sanctuaries or elaborate traps. Some records describe them as safe havens, with rules of hospitality so strict even bandits honored them. Others paint a darker picture, inns doubling as dens of thieves where unwary travelers were drugged, robbed, and buried behind the walls. Both could be true. Tonight, you decide not to finish the bread. As you lie on a straw mat later, stomach twisting between hunger and nausea, you realize the cruelest truth of all: survival here isn't about strength. It's about trust. And trust, like the meat you ate today, spoils fast. The morning begins quietly, almost too quietly. The caravan stirs, camels are loaded, boots drag across sand, but there's a hush hanging in the air that feels heavier than the cargo. You can't put your finger on it at first. Then it hits you. Someone's missing. The coughing merchant from last night. His spot by the fire is empty, his mat rolled away, and nobody's really talking about it. They don't have to. You know what happened. The road took another one. But this time, it isn't thirst or hunger that gets the spotlight. No, this time it's the plague's invisible handshake. Disease is the Silk Road's most efficient assassin. Faster than bandits, stealthier than deserts, it slips from one set of lungs to another with the ease of a whispered secret. You don't see it coming until your body is already halfway into the grave. You trudge alongside the caravan, and your brain does that wonderful trick of reminding you of every cough you heard last night, every time someone shared food or water, every moment you breathed in the same air as the merchant who's now gone. You touch your face instinctively, then yank your hand away like it's on fire. Too late. It's always too late. Here's your historical fact for today. The Black Death, yes that plague, didn't just roll through Europe like an uninvited houseguest. It hitchhiked its way across the Silk Road, carried by caravans, rats, fleas, and, lucky you, human contact. Entire towns emptied in days. Populations halved. Trade hubs went from bustling markets to silent cemeteries. Scholars still argue whether the Silk Road was the lifeline of civilization or the very highway of death. You already know which way you're leaning. Midday comes, and one of the guards coughs. Just once. Deep. Rattling. Everyone hears it, everyone freezes, then everyone pretends they didn't. Because acknowledging sickness is dangerous. Sickness means weakness. Weakness means someone gets left behind. And nobody wants to be the next, missing mat at the fire. Your water tastes wrong today. Metallic, like it's been sitting too long in the skin. You drink it anyway, throat scratchy, stomach turning in rebellion. Around you, others sip carefully, avoiding each other's eyes. You wonder if the caravan leader notices the way fear clings to the group like an extra shadow. He probably does. He just doesn't care. His job is to get as many goods to the next city as possible. People, replaceable. Here's your quirky little detail. Some travelers swore by bizarre cures while crossing the Silk Road. Burn a goat horn to chase away fever. Carry a pouch of crushed jade to keep away evil spirits. Swallow bits of silk to line your stomach against infection. Did any of it work? Not unless you count dying with style as a victory. As the day drags on, you start imagining every ache in your body as the first sign of plague. Your joints hurt, plague. Your head throbs, plague. That strange itch in your throat, plague. You become your own worst storyteller, spinning horrors in real time. The desert around you doesn't help. Every gust of wind feels like it's carrying more than sand. That night, when the caravan stops, the fear becomes almost visible. People sit farther apart than usual. The cook uses a different ladle for each pot. Conversations are short, clipped, desperate to avoid the word everyone's thinking. And then, as you settle on your mat, you hear it again, coughing. Not one voice this time, but several. A low chorus, scattered across camp. You close your eyes, pull the blanket tighter, and pretend you don't hear. Pretend the air isn't thick with invisible danger. Pretend you. The next leg of the journey begins with false confidence. The caravan leader holds up a hand, points toward the mountains in the distance, and declares something that translates roughly to, "We'll be fine if we follow this path." You almost laugh. Fine is not a word you'd use when staring at jagged stone teeth cutting into the horizon like they're sharpening themselves just for you. Maps lie, mountains don't. That's the reality, and unfortunately, maps are what you've got. They're not neat little sheets of paper like in your history textbooks. No, here they're scraps of parchment, scrawled by someone who probably made half of it up after 3 cups of rice wine. Trails drawn too straight, oases placed where no water ever existed. You get the sense that mapmaker, in those days was really just a polite term for creative liar. The group trudges toward the first pass, and the ground rises beneath your feet, steep and uneven. Rocks shift under every step, sliding downward with a hiss that makes you think of snakes. The camels grunt, legs trembling under heavy loads. You cling to your own balance, heart pounding in rhythm with every slip. One wrong move and you're not a traveler anymore, you're just gravity's next experiment. Here's your historical fact of the day. Several routes of the Silk Road wound through the Pamir and Tian Shan mountains, peaks so high that snow never melted. Caravans risked frostbite, avalanches, and altitude sickness just to shave weeks off their journey. Scholars still argue whether these shortcuts were acts of bravery or pure stupidity. Looking up at the cliffs around you, you know which side of the argument you'd join. By midday, your legs burn like firewood. The thin air scrapes your lungs, and every breath feels half-finished. You glance up, hoping the peak is near, only to find another stretch of jagged switchbacks mocking you. The caravan moves slower now, spread into a shaky line. Someone slips. A cry echoes, short, sharp, then silence. You look down, but the body is already gone, swallowed by the ravine below. No one stops. Stopping is worse than cruel, it's contagious. Here's a quirky little detail. Some travelers swore mountains had their own moods. They left offerings, coins, bread, even drops of wine, at certain spots to appease the spirits of the pass. You think about it as you drag your body forward. Maybe you should have left that salted meat behind as an offering. At least then the mountain would have choked on it instead of you. Night falls cold, colder than the desert ever dreamed of. The stars look closer here, sharp enough to pierce your skin if you reach too far. The group huddles in a cluster of rocks, lighting fires that do little more than mock the freezing wind. You curl against your blanket, every muscle stiff, your breath fogging the air like smoke. The scholarly debate slips in again. Historians argue whether these mountain routes were essential arteries of trade or unnecessary gambles taken only by the desperate. Standing here, teeth chattering, you're starting to suspect desperation is the only reason anyone climbs into this graveyard of stone. At dawn, the caravan pushes forward again, sliding and staggering along narrow paths. One slip of a hoof sends a loaded camel tumbling into nothingness, its scream echoing until it cuts off. The goods scatter like confetti into the abyss. Nobody speaks. The silence isn't grief, it's practicality. Less weight to carry, fewer mouths to feed. As you climb, breath ragged, you realize something grim. Deserts eat travelers whole, but mountains prefer to chew slowly. Every step here feels like another bite taken out of your resolve. And unlike the merchants with their gold, or the guards with their blades, you don't have anything sharp enough to fight back with. Just your shaking legs and the faint hope that the mapmaker wasn't lying this time. When the mountains finally loosen their grip, you don't feel relief. You feel tricked. The trail dips downward, yes, but only into valleys where the air is heavy with damp mist. Rivers cut the land like scars, swollen with snowmelt, and the bridges. Forget it, they don't exist. The caravan has two options: ford the icy water or go back the way you came. Neither is really an option. You watch as the leader prods a camel into the river first. The animal hesitates, then steps in, water rushing around its knees, then its belly. The current pulls hard, threatening to drag the beast sideways, but somehow it makes it across. Everyone exhales like they've been holding their breath for days. Then it's your turn. The water is a knife. That's the only way to describe it. It slashes at your skin, gnaws at your bones. Your boots fill instantly, your legs feel like lead, and your balance wobbles with every invisible stone underfoot. You want to scream, but the river would just swallow your voice. By the time you stagger onto the far bank, you're shaking so violently it looks like you're dancing badly to some rhythm no one else hears. Here's a neat historical aside. Some Silk Road caravans carried collapsible rafts made from inflated animal skins stitched together. Crude, but effective, if you didn't mind smelling like goat for weeks afterward. Not every group had the luxury, though. Most just braved the rivers with numb feet and prayers. Guess which group you're in. Onward you march, dripping wet, into valleys green with deceptive beauty. Grass waves in the wind like an invitation, but you don't trust it. Nothing this journey has offered has been free of danger. You're right to doubt, because here, in the marshy lowlands, new enemies lurk: insects. Clouds of them, mosquitoes, flies, gnats, tiny things that chew through your patience faster than raiders with swords. At night, you slap at your skin until your arms are raw, trying to keep the buzzing at bay. The others burn herbs in small piles, the smoke curling around your camp like a ghost. The insects retreat, but only just enough to remind you they'll be back. They always come back. Some historians like to point out that the Silk Road wasn't just a trade of goods, it was a trade of diseases. From fleas carrying plague to parasites thriving in rivers, caravans were basically walking petri dishes. Standing here, scratching your skin until it bleeds, you start to realize how much of global history probably began with a single bite. Days blend together. Valleys, rivers, marshes. Wet, dry, wet again. Your clothes stiffen with salt and dirt. The taste of water varies between barely drinkable and, oh, so this is what rotten leather tastes like. Sleep offers no comfort. Dreams come in fever flashes, mountains collapsing, rivers dragging you under, faces you've already lost staring at you from the other side of the firelight. But here's the strange part, you're still moving. Somehow, your legs have turned into something separate from your will. They walk even when your mind whispers to lie down, to stop, to let the earth reclaim you. Maybe this is what kept the Silk Road alive, not courage, not profit, but sheer stubborn biology. The body dragging itself forward even when the soul wants out. And then, one morning, the valley bends and opens wide. The mist lifts, and in the distance, you see it, a cluster of rooftops, pale smoke twisting upward into the sky. A settlement, people, safety, if such a word even means anything anymore. The caravan murmurs like a hive waking up. The leader straightens, pride flashing in his eyes, as if he knew this all along. You don't share his pride. You just feel empty, because deep down, you know what settlements mean on the Silk Road, not the end of danger, but the start of new ones. Merchants scheming, strangers bargaining, diseases lurking in crowds. Civilization doesn't save you, it just finds more creative ways to test you. Still, your legs keep walking, because that's all they know how to do. The rooftops look welcoming from a distance, don't they? Thin curls of smoke drifting into the pale sky, like the town itself is exhaling after a long day. You imagine warm food, softer beds, maybe even a smile that isn't carved out of suspicion. But as you shuffle closer, you realize the truth. Every smile here costs something. On the Silk Road, even kindness has a price tag. The gates creak as you pass through, the sound oddly theatrical, like a drumroll for your next misfortune. Stalls line the main street, bright with bolts of cloth and bowls of spices. The air is thick with incense and roasted meat, and yet somehow you can still catch the sour tang of sweat, horse dung, and something metallic, blood, if you had to guess. The combination makes your stomach lurch in ways you'd rather not admit out loud. You trail behind the caravan master as he leads you into a courtyard shaded by prayer flags. Monks in saffron robes move quietly between shrines, their heads bowed, their lips murmuring chants. You're told to kneel, to offer coins, to buy a blessing for safe passage. And here's the kicker, you actually consider it. Because after the deserts, the rivers, the bugs, and the endless ache in your bones, a little divine insurance suddenly feels like the best bargain in town. The monk accepts your coin with a serene smile. He sprinkles ash into your palm, marks your forehead, and whispers something in a language you don't understand. You nod anyway, pretending you've absorbed wisdom, when really you're just hoping he hasn't cursed you by accident. Scholars still argue whether these rituals were genuine acts of faith or elaborate tourism traps centuries ahead of their time. You don't care, you just want any edge you can get. But not everyone buys faith. One merchant in your caravan scoffs, mutters about superstition, and struts off to find ale instead. Hours later, you hear he's been cheated blind in the tavern, 3 bags of salt gone in exchange for wine watered down until it tastes like sour rain. Faith might not guarantee safety, but clearly, skepticism doesn't either. Night descends fast in the settlement. The lanterns glow, flickering amber across worn walls. From every corner, you hear competing prayers, Buddhist chants, Islamic calls, Christian hymns. This crossroads doesn't care which god you're whispering to, as long as you're whispering something. It's like a cosmic insurance market, and you're the nervous client shopping for policies. And just when you think you're safe within these walls, the whispers start. Traders lean across tables, sharing stories about caravans that never made it past the next stretch. Raiders waiting by the gorge, poison slipped into cups, a town upriver swallowed by fever in a single month. The more stories you hear, the less your blessing feels like protection and the more it feels like a receipt for a false promise. Still, you can't shake the ritual from your head. The ash on your forehead tingles faintly, like a reminder that someone, somewhere, is supposed to be watching out for you. It's comforting and unnerving at the same time, like being tucked in by a stranger holding a knife. History fact check time. Many Silk Road settlements thrived by offering both religious services and trade. Temples doubled as safe havens, shrines often held storage rooms, and monks sometimes acted as financial middlemen. In other words, prayer and profit were the same. Coin, just flipped depending on who was asking. By the second night, you're restless. The chants echo in your skull, the incense clogs your lungs, and every shadow looks like it's waiting for you to fall asleep. You lie on a rough mat, staring at the ceiling beams, wondering if faith is supposed to feel like this, half comfort, half threat. And then it hits you. Maybe survival here isn't about choosing belief or doubt. Maybe it's about pretending long enough to make it through the next town, the next shrine, the next river. You don't need to believe in the gods. You just need them to believe you do. So, you keep the ash on your forehead. You let the monks think their blessing holds power. You even whisper a half-hearted prayer before bed, just in case. Because on the Silk Road, even superstition can feel like armor. But deep down, you know it's paper thin. The morning smells faintly of roasted nuts, damp earth, and money. Merchants are already bustling, their hands sliding over bolts of silk, weighing coins, calculating trades. But beneath the bustle, something darker hums. You realize, with a sinking feeling, that silk hides more than wealth. It hides secrets, smuggled goods, and sometimes blood. A trader sidles up, his robes heavy with dust and fortune. He smiles, teeth bright, eyes sharper than any blade. Silk from Chang'an, he boasts, rare enough to buy influence in 5 kingdoms. You nod, pretending to care, while secretly calculating how easy it would be to steal it, or get killed trying. Because on this road, the fine threads in the silk are woven as tightly as the plots surrounding them. Espionage isn't new here. Merchants double as spies. Couriers conceal messages in hollowed-out bolts. Assassins can be disguised as storytellers or camel drivers. You glance at the caravan members, some of them likely carry secrets they wouldn't hesitate to defend with steel. Scholars still argue whether the Silk Road was primarily a network of trade or a vast intelligence-gathering operation. Looking at the glint of hidden knives beneath tunics, you're not inclined to side with either, just inclined to survive. A quirky little detail. Some spies used silk threads themselves to hide messages. Literally, they sewed notes into garments, invisible unless carefully unraveled. One wrong tug, one careless step, and your clothing could betray everything: where you came from, who sent you, even which towns you intended to rob or beg from. Every step in the bazaar is calculated. Every handshake measured. Every glance can be a transaction of death or profit. You try to navigate the marketplace. The crowd presses in from all sides, voices shouting, bells jingling, merchants gesturing wildly. You keep your hands close, your coin bag hidden, your eyes on the horizon for trouble. Trouble arrives anyway. A man bumps you from behind, smooth as a shadow, and for a second your heart skips. Did he steal your coin pouch? Plant a message, or is it nothing more than chance? In the Silk Road, you can never tell. Lunch is brief, a hasty bite of bread and dried fruit. The smells of the bazaar, perfumes, spices, cooked meat, sweat, mix into a dizzying perfume that's intoxicating and nauseating all at once. You notice how every merchant calculates gestures as much as prices. A nod here, a smile there, all potential signals. Survival now requires the same subtlety as the goods you're passing: delicate, precise, and endlessly deceptive. By mid-afternoon, you witness a quiet theft. A man in a blue robe lifts a pouch from a distracted merchant and slips away, unseen by anyone except you. Everyone else either didn't notice or didn't care. The market thrives on these minor acts of crime. They lubricate trade like oil in gears. You can almost admire the audacity, if you weren't already exhausted from trying to survive every other danger the road has thrown at you. Night comes, soft yet insidious. You sit at a small fire in the inn, trying to rest while the hum of commerce continues outside. Travelers, spies, and thieves move through the shadows like ghosts. You think about the day. Silk traded, secrets exchanged, whispers that could start wars. And you realize that each transaction, each secret, could be the one that ends your journey. Historical fact check. Silk wasn't just a commodity, it was political power. Kings and emperors used it to negotiate treaties, bribe officials, and spy across borders. You're just a pawn on this vast chessboard, a person whose survival depends on reading the board faster than everyone else. You lay down, exhausted. Your mind races with whispers, plots, and half-formed fears. You can't tell friend from foe, merchant from spy, even shadow from threat. And as sleep finally threatens, you realize the uncomfortable truth. The Silk Road doesn't just transport goods, it transports danger, and everyone around you carries a piece. The next morning hits with a glare sharper than anything you've felt so far. The town fades behind you as the caravan heads into the plains again, this time aiming for a rumored oasis. It's said to be lush, full of water, palm trees, and the kind of shade that makes your knees forget what walking feels like. You're skeptical. You've learned by now that rumors on the Silk Road are as dangerous as anything else. The path stretches long and flat, deceptively calm. The sand is fine and white, almost sparkling under the sun, but it hides shallow pits, twisted roots, and the occasional burrowed animal ready to trip you up. One step, one misjudged stride, and you could twist an ankle, or worse. Every footfall is calculated, every movement a negotiation with survival itself. By midday, the heat reaches its usual cruel peak. Sweat runs down your back, pooling beneath the pack on your shoulders. Camels moan softly, heavy with cargo and fatigue. The caravan slows. You sip water sparingly, knowing you have just enough to survive until the oasis, or maybe not. Every drop is precious, yet every step demands more. Here's a historical fact to keep in mind. Real Silk Road oases were lifelines. They offered water, shelter, and a chance to trade or barter. But they were also places of ambush, disease, and theft. Scholars still argue whether stopping at oases prolonged life or merely postponed death for the unwary. You're beginning to suspect they prolong both misery and anxiety in equal measure. A quirky little detail emerges in the heat. Some travelers carried mirrors to signal distant riders, reflecting the sun like tiny flashes of hope. It's ingenious, except when your own reflection blinds you momentarily and makes you stumble. You curse silently at the invention while reminding yourself that survival often comes with painful irony. Hours stretch, the horizon wavers, shifting in waves of heat. And then, almost cruelly, the oasis appears, but it isn't the paradise you imagined. Water glints faintly, surrounded by palm fronds, but the colors are deceptive. You've seen mirages before, but the brain has a cruel sense of humor here. It wants you to hope, to walk faster, to overreach. People are already whispering about whether it's real. You squint, unsure if your eyes are tricking you, or if the desert is. One of the scouts ventures ahead. His legs vanish into the shimmer of the mirage. A tense silence follows. He returns, soaked in sweat, looking pale and muttering that the water is farther than it seems. The caravan leader adjusts the path. You follow, legs trembling, feeling every ounce of doubt crawl along your spine. And here's where danger folds in. Subtly, the oasis isn't just a rest stop, it's a trap for the careless. Poisonous snakes, predatory birds, and even hidden pits have been documented in such sites. A single misstep can undo days of careful navigation. You keep your eyes glued to the sand, toes tense, every sense screaming vigilance. By evening, the real oasis reveals itself. A pool of cool water surrounded by date palms, camels drinking contentedly, merchants unloading goods with relief. You exhale, muscles finally unclenching. For a moment, the road's threats feel distant. You fill your water skin, splash your face, and let your throat drink deeply. Yet the scholarly debate lingers in your thoughts. Did the oasis truly save lives, or did it merely gather the desperate to make them easier to prey upon? You glance at the shadowed palms. Every tree hides a secret. Every ripple on the water suggests hidden currents. Even in apparent safety, the Silk Road doesn't loosen its grip. Night descends slowly, stars mirrored in the calm water. The fire crackles, sending warmth through tired limbs. You lie back on the sand, trying to convince. 11. Dawn comes pale and uneasy. You rise from the oasis with a lingering sense that calm is just the desert's way of sharpening its knives before the next act. The caravan packs quickly, restless after even a short pause. Camels grunt, merchants fuss, and you feel every ache in your legs like a lit fuse ready to ignite. The road ahead stretches flat and open, a desert plateau that seems innocent at first glance. But you've learned better. Flat doesn't mean safe. Flat means there's nowhere to hide. Thieves, raiders, or worse, the unpredictable desert itself, can strike without warning. Every grain of sand is a potential trap, every shimmer a possible mirage concealing disaster. You trudge forward, feet sinking into soft sand that seems to pull you backward with each step. Sweat stings your eyes. The horizon wavers with heat waves, the sun bearing down like a relentless overseer. You sip water cautiously, rationing every drop. Hunger and thirst have become constant companions, whispering reminders that the next misstep could be your last. Here's a historical fact for the day. Desert plateaus on the Silk Road were notorious for ambushes. Raiders used the open spaces to spot weak or isolated travelers from miles away, then struck with brutal efficiency. Scholars still argue whether these raids significantly disrupted trade or simply became another cost of doing business. You already know your opinion. They disrupt life, sanity, and sometimes limbs. By midday, you spot something moving on the horizon. At first, you think it's another traveler. But as it draws closer, you realize it's a sandstorm forming. A wall of sand, sharp as glass, roaring with the promise of chaos. The caravan halts, camels bray, guards shout orders, merchants scramble to cover wares. And you just stand there, heart pounding, as the storm swells toward you. A quirky little detail. Some travelers wore long veils or scarves soaked in water to protect their faces from the sandstorms. Others smeared mud across their skin, believing it would shield them. None of these methods were guaranteed, and most merely bought you seconds of comfort. You tie your scarf tightly, wishing the fabric was a shield instead of thin cloth. The storm hits like a wall of knives. Sand lashes your skin, getting into every crevice, eyes, nose, mouth, ears. Your mouth tastes like grit and metal. Camels panic, stumbling and braying. Merchants shout, their voices barely audible above the roar. Visibility drops to nothing. You stumble blindly, hands outstretched, brushing against the backs of others, trying not to fall. One wrong move, one lost step, and the plateau swallows you. As you crawl through the storm, you realize the cruelest lesson of the Silk Road: survival isn't just about avoiding thieves or rivers or disease. Sometimes it's about enduring the elements themselves, which have no morals, no mercy, and no pause for pity. Scholars still debate whether these sandstorms deterred trade or simply weeded out the weak. You suspect the answer is obvious. Hours, or maybe minutes, it's impossible to tell. Later, the storm relents. The sun returns, now mercilessly white, revealing a flattened, scarred plateau. Tracks are scattered, some from the caravan, some from animals, some who knows what else. Camels groan, exhausted. Merchants count their goods with shaking hands. You take stock of yourself. Scratches, bruises, grit in every fold of clothing. You taste blood where your lips cracked in the sand. Even in the clearing aftermath, the plateau refuses mercy. Water is low, the horizon still stretches menacingly, and you know the storm has only rearranged the dangers, not removed them. Every shadow, every shimmer, every loose rock is a potential hazard waiting for the unwary. You stumble forward, muscles stiff, body screaming for respite. You glance at the leader. His expression is tight, controlled, hiding fear behind routine. That's the way survival works here. Hide the panic, keep moving, and hope tomorrow isn't the day the desert decides you've overstayed your welcome. The plateau finally gives way to cliffs and jagged rock faces, signaling the approach to a notorious mountain gorge. You can feel the temperature drop, not just because of elevation but because danger has a new form here. The gorge is narrow, walls pressing in on either side, shadowed, echoing. One slip in the fall isn't just painful, it's permanent. The caravan slows, camels cautious, their hooves scrabbling against the uneven ground. Merchants tighten reins, voices hushed, eyes scanning every shadow. You follow, careful not to breathe too loudly. Every step feels like a negotiation with gravity. Every sound, rock shifting, distant bird cry, sets your nerves on edge. Historical fact check. The Silk Road passes through numerous gorges and passes where bandits historically ambushed traders. Narrow paths prevented escape, forcing travelers into choke points perfect for robbery or worse. Scholars still debate whether bandits were organized groups or opportunistic loners exploiting geography. You don't care about the debate, you care about not being next. Midway through the gorge, a sound reaches your ears, a faint whistle, high-pitched, almost melodic. You freeze. The caravan leader signals for silence. You glance around, trying to pinpoint the source. Nothing. And then rocks tumble from above, loose, small, deliberately dislodged. Someone's waiting. A quirky little detail. Bandits along the Silk Road sometimes used simple acoustic tricks, whistles, echoing calls, to confuse travelers, making small rocks sound like avalanches, creating terror without even showing themselves. You realize how much panic alone can break a caravan, and how close you are to experiencing it firsthand. Suddenly, a group of masked men appears at the narrowest part of the gorge. Weapons glint in the slanting sunlight, swords, daggers, and crude bows. Merchants shout, camels rear, and you realize there's no real escape. The gorge itself is the enemy now, a natural trap the bandits exploit with surgical precision. One of the raiders yells, demanding valuables. The leader negotiates quickly, tossing a small bag of coins. The men pause, tally their spoils, and disappear as suddenly as they appeared, melting into shadowy alcoves in the gorge walls. Everyone exhales collectively, relief mixing with lingering fear. Your heart is pounding, adrenaline coursing through every vein. Even after the ambush ends, the gorge doesn't feel safe. Loose stones, hidden crevices, and echoes remind you that danger is omnipresent. Every step forward is cautious, measured. You glance at your hands, shaking slightly, and realize that survival here is as much mental as it is physical. Fear becomes a constant companion, a shadow you carry even when the immediate threat vanishes. Historical aside, records suggest many travelers who survived ambushes lived only to face the next hazard, a collapsing bridge, flash floods, or sudden snow in higher passes. Scholars still debate whether the psychological strain of repeated threats contributed more to Silk Road fatalities than actual injuries. You don't need a study to confirm it, you feel it in your bones. Night finally falls, the gorge quiet once more. You rest in a tiny alcove, shivering, muscles trembling, every nerve still tingling from adrenaline. You watch shadows flicker across the walls, imagining eyes, blades, whispers. Sleep comes fitfully, interrupted by dreams of falling, of stones raining down, of masked figures waiting for a misstep. And as you drift between consciousness and nightmare, you understand, surviving the Silk Road doesn't mean overcoming a single threat. It means enduring an unbroken chain of them, one after another, each testing you until you're raw and ragged, still walking because you have no other choice. Dawn in the gorge is mercifully quiet, but the respite feels temporary. The caravan emerges onto a river delta, a tangle of streams, reeds, and soft mud that threatens to swallow your boots with every step. Water runs in slow, deceptive channels, hiding holes and snags that could trap both man and camel alike. You curse under your breath, realizing the Silk Road doesn't just punish through heat or bandits, it loves to humiliate as well. The river delta seems calm from a distance, even inviting. You see birds skimming the surface, dragonflies flitting above the water, reeds swaying like dancers. But experience has taught you otherwise. Anything that looks peaceful on the Silk Road can become a death trap in an instant. One misstep, and you're knee-deep in mud, at the mercy of currents, or face-to-face with predators lurking beneath the reeds. Here's your historical fact for context. River deltas along the Silk Road were crucial for irrigation and travel but were equally dangerous. Travelers documented drowned camels, lost caravans, and even whole trading parties swept away in sudden flash floods. Scholars still argue whether traders overestimated their ability to navigate these wetlands or underestimated the natural hazards. You don't need debate, you just need to get across alive. The caravan leader signals a cautious crossing. Camels are led one by one, ropes tied tightly to keep them from being swept away. You follow, boots squelching, muscles burning as you lift feet from one unstable patch to the next. Every step requires total concentration, and your heart hammers in your chest like it knows the delta doesn't forgive mistakes. A quirky detail surfaces amid the struggle. Some traders used hollow gourds or inflated animal bladders to help camels float through deep patches. Ingenious, but also ridiculous looking, a visual reminder that desperation fuels creativity in the most humiliating ways. You glance at a struggling camel and wonder if it secretly knows it's the laughingstock of history. By midday, the caravan reaches the main channel. Water rushes faster here, icy and merciless. Camels hesitate, the ropes tug at strained shoulders. One slips, a gasp rises from the merchants, and for a heart-stopping moment, you imagine it's the end for the entire caravan. But with a tangle of ropes, careful guidance, and some lucky timing, the animals make it. You step onto solid ground, legs trembling, mud clinging to every surface. Despite survival, the river delta leaves scars. Skin pruned, boots ruined, packs heavier with soaked goods. Conversations are subdued, people glance nervously at the next stretch, realizing that every victory here is temporary. Danger is always around the corner, or beneath the water. Another historical aside. Traders sometimes used local guides who knew the delta's secret channels, hidden sandbars, and sudden currents. Hiring a guide could mean the difference between life and death, or the difference between arriving with all your goods intact and losing half the caravan's wealth to the water. Scholars still debate the ethics of charging high fees for such essential knowledge, but you don't care. You'd pay any price to walk dry again. By evening, you finally find a raised patch of ground to rest. You slump against your pack, exhausted, mud caked into your hair and clothing. The river delta stretches behind you, deceptively calm in the fading light. Stars begin to appear, reflected faintly in the water, like a cruel imitation of safety. You know tomorrow will bring another test, another hazard, another trial. And yet, for a fleeting moment, you let yourself breathe, appreciating the fragility of survival in a world that refuses to forgive. The morning sun blazes overhead as the caravan enters a desert canyon, walls towering and unyielding on either side. The sand here is fine, almost silky, and deceptively deep. You already know better. It will steal your footing, slow your pace, and test every ounce of patience you have left. The canyon is narrow, winding, and merciless, a natural trap designed by the earth itself. Caution dominates every step. Camels teeter over shifting dunes, merchants huddle close, muttering prayers or bargaining with invisible forces for safe passage. You wonder if the canyon has a personality, a quiet cruelty that watches and laughs when someone stumbles. Maybe it does. Maybe that's why travelers call it the Whispering Canyon. Historical fact. Several desert canyons along the Silk Road were infamous for sand traps and sudden flash floods. Caravans documented lost animals, swallowed goods, and even travelers who vanished without a trace. Scholars still argue whether these natural hazards were accidental or a strategic deterrent to slow trade and protect certain regions. You don't care about debate, you care about not becoming a footnote in history. Midday heat presses down like a heavy, invisible hand. Your water is low, sweat stings your eyes, sand clings to every surface, forming a gritty paste on your skin. You lift your head, glimpsing the canyon's walls shimmering with heat, and realize that even the terrain conspires against you. Every slope is a miniature avalanche waiting to happen. Every curve hides the next peril. A quirky little detail. Some traders carried small whistles or bells to warn others of collapsing sand or shifting dunes. But the sound barely travels over the wind, and sometimes it just adds to the chaos, creating panic instead of warning. You pull out your scarf and tie it over your mouth, muffling both dust and breath, and silently hope the canyon doesn't decide to throw anything heavier than sand at you. Suddenly, a section of sand gives way beneath a camel. It slips, half submerged in a sudden miniature dune, eyes wide and panic-stricken. Merchants rush to stabilize the animal, ropes straining under the effort. You step carefully, avoiding the same fate, heart hammering with adrenaline. The canyon is patient, it waits for mistakes. As the sun dips lower, shadows stretch long and thin across the walls. You realize the canyon is a prison of light and dark, where a single misstep can hide you from everyone else. You follow the leader in silence, muscles screaming, lungs burning, every nerve alert. The canyon teaches you humility. Strength is temporary, speed is optional, and survival is earned in small increments. Historical aside. Travelers sometimes left markers, stones, carvings, or cloth strips, to help guide those who followed. Yet even these signs could be misleading, either by nature or by human trickery. Scholars still debate the reliability of these navigational aids. You glance at a faded cloth tied to a rock and silently hope someone else isn't waiting to capitalize on your misreading. Night arrives like a shadow creeping over the canyon walls. The caravan huddles, fires small and flickering, sand clinging stubbornly even in the chill. You lie down, exhausted, listening to the whispers of wind bouncing off rock. Sleep is tentative, haunted by imagined collapses, hidden pits, and lurking predators. You know the canyon is patient, it doesn't care who survives, only that the road tests every traveler who dares to cross. By dawn, you've learned a bitter truth: the canyon doesn't reward bravery. It rewards caution, endurance, and a healthy respect for the fact that it's bigger, older, and infinitely more merciless than you. And even if you survive it, the Silk Road has already etched another lesson into your body: humility is survival's closest companion. The last leg begins as you approach the frozen highland passage. The air turns sharp, a biting cold that steals your breath and makes every exhale sting. Snow clings stubbornly to the peaks, icy winds carve patterns across your face, and the path is slick, treacherous, and unforgiving. You've walked through deserts, gorges, and river deltas, but nothing feels quite like this. Camels groan in protest, hooves sliding over thin ice and frozen mud. Merchants wrap themselves in layers, their breath visible in ghostly clouds. Your fingers ache inside gloves, toes numb despite wool socks. Every step demands focus. Every misstep could mean a fall into snow-packed crevices, where the cold will finish what the terrain starts. Historical fact. Silk Road travelers crossing high-altitude passes faced frostbite, hypothermia, and avalanches. Some expeditions were reduced to small surviving fragments, their goods left behind in snow or ice. Scholars still argue whether these routes were necessary shortcuts or sheer folly pursued out of desperation. Standing here, you feel like a witness to both their courage and their madness. The wind carries whispers of ancient travelers, imagined or real. You hear tales of frozen merchants, abandoned camels, and lost scrolls with fortunes inside. Each gust feels like a reminder that nature here is merciless and history has left a breadcrumb trail of human hubris in its wake. A quirky little detail. Some merchants carried small fireproof containers to hold documents or money, hoping the cold wouldn't destroy them. Others coated ropes in tallow to prevent freezing. You tug your scarf tighter and slide a small pouch close to your chest, silently acknowledging that survival here requires ingenuity almost as much as endurance. Midway through the pass, the storm descends. Snow blinding, wind howling, everything white and indistinguishable. The caravan moves as a single cautious entity, ropes in hands linked to prevent separation. Every step is a negotiation with death, every glance a reminder that the highlands do not forgive hesitation. You slip once, boots scraping ice, and a camel nuzzles you in alarm. You regain balance, heart hammering, realizing that exhaustion has made your body slower than your mind. The pass tests not just strength, but alertness. One lapse, and the cold takes more than warmth, it can take life. Even in this frozen wasteland, danger isn't always obvious. Snow conceals weak ice patches, hidden rocks, and sudden drops. Every creak beneath a foot echoes like a warning. You wonder how many travelers before you underestimated the highlands and became silent lessons for those who followed. Scholars still debate the role of human error versus natural hazard in Silk Road fatalities. You know instinctively, it's a cruel partnership. By nightfall, the caravan finds a small cave for shelter. You huddle inside, shivering, exhausted, body aching from cold, hunger, and tension. Outside, the wind screams through the pass like a living thing. You wrap yourself tighter, acknowledging a bitter truth: the Silk Road does not reward resilience with comfort. It rewards it with survival, sometimes, and nothing more. As you close your eyes, you feel the full weight of the journey, the deserts, rivers, gorges, canyons, and now these frozen peaks. You have survived, barely, with your mind sharper and your body battered. The road has tested every part of you, and though the end of this section looms, the lessons linger: patience, vigilance, humility, and respect for the forces far older and stronger than yourself. The wind dies down outside the cave, replaced by a quiet hush that feels almost sacred. You lie back on your rough bedding, body aching, lungs still tasting of cold and dust, and notice the small miracles around you: faint starlight reflected on icy walls, the distant hum of a hidden stream, the gentle rise and fall of your companion's breathing. Everything feels slower, softer, as if the world itself is exhaling after the long trials of the Silk Road. Your mind drifts over the journey, replaying moments of fear, pain, and unexpected awe. The desert sands, the whispering canyon, the treacherous rivers, the mirage of the oasis, the relentless mountains, they were more than obstacles. They were teachers, each offering lessons in patience, resilience, and humility. You realize that survival isn't about conquering the road, it's about moving with it, respecting its whims, and embracing the small victories that allow your journey to continue. A soft breeze brushes your face through the cave's entrance, carrying the faint scent of snow and earth. You close your eyes and listen to it, imagining the gentle sway of trees you've seen, the quiet lapping of water at distant rivers, the murmur of towns now behind you. Each sound and memory feels like a lullaby, coaxing tension from your muscles, easing your mind into calm. The road is merciless, yes, but for a moment, it allows you this peace. You can feel the weight of the journey settle into something lighter, a deep, soothing ache that is almost comforting. You remember the lessons, the whispers of history, the clever tricks of survival, and a small smile forms. You have endured, you have walked further than most would dare, and even if the road continues to test you tomorrow, tonight it grants reprieve. Let your eyes drift closed, feel the warmth of your blanket, and hear the soft whisper of wind against stone. You are here, you have survived, and for tonight, that is enough. Dream of safe paths, gentle streams, and quiet stars. Let the Silk Road's lessons sink into your bones, not as fear, but as wisdom.